My name is Ethan. Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. Put your thoughts into the comments about the different species of animals, and let's dive into the first article. So, from Sci News, tiny dinosaur relative roam Triassic Madagascar. Well, we do have different species of dinosaurs that also come from Madagascar, not just from the Triassic, but also from the corresponding Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. So, a new genus and species of Ornithodyryn, an early relative of dinosaurs and pterosaurs that lived around 237 million years ago, has been identified from the fossilized remains found in southwestern Madagascar. Well, this is right at the beginning of the evolution of true dinosaurs, though at this time and slightly prior, and technically, throughout the rest of the Triassic period, you would have had different species of proto dinosaurs existing, or at least different species of archosauromorphs, which is the branch of reptiles that dinosaurs evolved from, that would continue. They would have contained a wide variety of characteristics that would have resembled dinosaurs, but certain things that would have branched them off from that lineage. So, named Congonaphan kelli, the ancient reptile was surprisingly small, estimated height at around 10 centimeters or 3.9 inches. Wow, that is tiny. I am wondering if this is a juvenile of whatever type of a specific creature this is. Its tiny body size may help explain the origins of flight in pterosaurs and the presence of fuzz on the skin of both pterosaurs and dinosaurs. So it sounds like this is a species of animal that contains a lot of possibly pre-pterosaur characteristics. Well, it looks definitely much more dinosaur-like. I'm actually surprised it's not considered part of a member of Dinosauriae. So this is quite astounding. But I would say, looking at the hands, those are very different from really any species of dinosaur. There were a wide variety of species, especially if you looked at the herbivorous lineage of ornithischians, or even looking at the sauropod lineage of the saurischian lineage of dinosaurs that had five fingers on their toes. Many groups of theropods, however, didn't. Having five fingers was a great rarity, only really occurring possibly into the Triassic at certain points. So there is a general perception of dinosaurs as being giants, but this new animal is very close to the divergence of dinosaurs and pterosaurs, and it's shockingly small, said Dr. Christian Kammerer, a research curator in paleontology at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. There are a wide variety of different species of dinosaurs that are not much more than maybe 8 feet in length or pushing somewhere around 2.4 meters. You have it where different species of raptors, like the dromaeosaurs, different types of, not including the pterosaurs, which are very closely related to dinosaurs, but they're not part of Dinosauriae. Different species of even ornithischians, like the ceratopsians or the horned dinosaurs that would give rise to creatures such as pentaceratops and triceratops. There are a wide variety of species that were somewhere around 3 to maybe 6 feet in length. We're pushing not much more than 1.8 meters and starting off around a meter. In fact, I actually um, come to think of it, there are certain ceratopsians that might have not reached much more than 1.5 to 2 feet in length, or possibly somewhere around zero point 0.7 meters. So, trying to think of who else. Also, back in even the Triassic period, like with different species of theropods. Actually, let's bring up a smaller creature, the Pisanosaurus. Pisanosaurus. I wonder if this guy's even common. Um, It's not there are certain things about this creature that do resemble the actual depiction or a more paleo accurate look. But the problem is I would say it's a little too heavily built for a Pisanosaurus. So this is one of the earlier species of dinosaurs to exist back in the Triassic period, possibly around 234 million years ago. It seems to be a member of Saurischiae, but it's not a true member of Theropoda. It doesn't seem that Theropoda will really, well, which is the family of dinosaurs that would evolve into animals like Coelophysis, Allosaurus, T Rex. But it just seems to be an earlier carnivorous Saurischian. And it also displays four claws, which would still occur on a wide variety of different species of theropod dinosaurs, even into the early Cretaceous period, so after 143 million years ago. But at this stage in the Triassic, it is fairly common. And then you have the different species of smaller um, ornithischian like herbivores occurring. Now, I am wondering who this species of dinosaur is that it's hunting because it looks very ornithopod like, or at least a bipedal ornithopod from the Jurassic. However, ornithopods don't seem to have evolved until somewhere around 201 million years ago at the start of the Jurassic. But looking at Pisanosaurus, it's only pushing maybe somewhere around 36 inches or a little over 3 feet or almost a meter, and probably only weighs somewhere around 5 to 20 pounds. I mean, that is a large difference, but it's a very lean type of a creature. So maybe at most it's weighing maybe 8 kilograms. Am I confusing that carnivore or the like the Pisanosaurus, like the herbivore in the depiction with the carnivore possibly? Because maybe it's him that I'm thinking of, and possibly it's like one of the earlier Styracosaurus representations, which is an early species of mid Triassic theropod dinosaur. So this could be like towards the end of the reign of Pisanosaurus, but yeah, considering this instance, it really has that type of a ornithopod sort of a look. A very, however, I'd say tall forelimbs compared to its body size than other species of herbivores later into the Jurassic. So,
They're giving it different types of looks.
is there another one where it also has that roundish type of a head? Yeah, odd. Maybe. Oh, okay. That seems to make more sense. Yeah, so it's probably him. Now, it's, I'd say it has something between an ornithischian, almost an oviraptor type of a look. Um, who else? Certain types of like smaller saurosaurs to an extent. So, relatives of creatures such as Compsognathus, but Compsognathus doesn't seem to appear until the Jurassic, like around 152 million years ago. There was a theropod, however, back in the late Triassic called Procompsognathus, which is possibly the predecessor to Compsognathus. But it does show characteristics with all of them. And then looking at the feet, or at least the front hands, it's something between like certain herbivores and almost like certain types of proto mammals, which is interesting considering it's not related to the synapsids or even the therapsids, which would have existed back in the Permian period over 252 million years ago, and then later throughout the Triassic period. It seems to be a Rawasuchian, Pseudosuchian crocodilomorph in the background. Seems to have caught one of them. But yeah, this seems to make sense in the overall depiction. Oh, it also has a bit of like an earlier bipedal ceratopsian look. However, there were different species of ceratopsians that existed towards the very end of the Cretaceous around 68 million years ago. Um, so it's just very odd, and it has a wide variety of characteristics linking with different species of dinosaur. So that's not him. This would be it would that looks closer to a species like Eoraptor or possibly Eodromius. Yeah, especially like even looking at the leg structure. So back to what we're looking at here with this species of possibly proto dinosaur, since it seems to belong to a completely different lineage of archosauromorphs. The discovery of this tiny relative of dinosaurs and pterosaurs emphasizes the importance of Madagascar's fossil record for improving knowledge of vertebrate history during times that are poorly known in other places. Said University of Antananarivo's Professor Lovasoa Ranivoharimanana. That's a long one. But yeah, I'd say when it comes to Madagascar's fossil record, some might be somewhat familiar. I've heard of the different species of like giant lemur that used to occur on the island. There were a couple of other large herbivores compared to today's primates, or specifically the lemurs and the carnivorous fossa. But then we do have saltwater crocodiles that also, not saltwater crocodiles, Nile crocodiles that will roam different parts of Madagascar. But during the Mesozoic era, the time of the dinosaurs, we had a wide range of different species of theropod dinosaurs, even sauropods at times, different species of crocodilomorphs. And further back into the Triassic period, there were different species of, also Jurassic dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and the other archosauromorphs that would have roamed the region as well. So the partial skeleton of Congo-Nafon Kelai was found in 1998 in the Morondava Basin of southwestern Madagascar. Wow. He still looks, I mean, very um theropod-like to an extent, but he does show a wide range of characteristics, almost as if he's carrying lizard-like traits from different parts of the Permian, or not exactly lizards, but from different branches of earlier reptiles before the archosaurs.
Oh, they're
Especially
going to
looking
say
at his,
archosaurs.
yeah, especially looking at his skull. But he has very long legs compared to his body size. I mean, it's very distinct from like other reptiles or early archosaurs, like Euparkeria.
Pro animators back.
Well,
I've missed so much.
yeah, welcome back, Megalosaurus. Well, um, I mean, this is definitely interesting what we're seeing here with this odd species of ornithodon. I'm not too familiar with, yeah, ornithodyryn, this group of archosaurs. But geesh, I mean, even looking at the different species of dinosaurs, actually, let's bring a comparison up. Like just Gallimimus, Gallimus, which is really the only other group of dinosaurs. However, you could say that there were different species of kygnathids that would include like Gigantoraptor, which do have relatively long legs compared to their body size. But then there are the ornithomimids. Dromaeosaurids are the raptors to an extent, but I would say a bit more so with these creatures. They're actually giving him a bit more muscle on his calves. But possibly even the thighs. It's hard to can't really see in that instance. But besides that, these are some of the fastest species of dinosaurs to have existed during the Cretaceous period. They were not alive during the Jurassic or previous Triassic periods. So, especially back in the late Cretaceous period, when you have other species like Ornithomimus, Struthiomimus, Archaeornithomimus, roaming different parts of Asia and North America. These animals, in many instances, oh yeah, and then there's the much larger Dinohyrus. So these are all members of the Ornithomimidae lineage of omnivorous dinosaurs and theropods themselves. But you could have it with some species like Ornithomimus or even Gallimimus. They were probably capable of running it up to 40 miles per hour.
Okay, this looks like AI because all their legs are up in the air.
Yeah, it is a picture. I think these animals like possibly converting it somewhere around 65 kilometers per hour. But let's see. Yeah, I would say these are very odd looking Gallimimus. I mean, it is just depicting them running along a certain area of the Gobi Desert of Mongolia, considering this is where the animal was found. I think there might be certain misconceptions as or for Gallimimus roaming different parts of Canada or the United States, especially like different areas of Montana, Wyoming, but it has not been discovered in the continent. That would belong to, or that statement would be true for species such as Ornithomimus. I would say it's an odd depiction of him, really just putting his hands on the ground, but certainly is possible. He does have a very robust upper arm, but besides that, it's an okay model. It does seem that we do have evidence for Gallimimus having feathers. I will say though, for the Jurassic World models, they were a bit of a joke. And same thing for I'll leave the T-Rex out of this, but T-Rex also did not coexist with Gallimimus. It was a close relative of T-Rex called named Tarbosaurus batar, also from Mongolia around 71 million years ago. Actually, yeah, looking at, Tarbosaurus, I mean, this creature was also much smaller compared to T-Rex. But focusing on Calamimus, it also would have had shorter fingers compared to its body size than what we were seeing in those models. They had extremely long fingers, like almost there's another lineage of dinosaurs that would have had much longer fingers, and I'm not referring to the claws of like different species of therizinosaurs. Who could that be? I mean, it might just be hey, I might be thinking of Megaraptorids or possibly just a more sleek sort of a species of Spinosaur. But these look a bit more accurate. I would say though, with unless we have evidence for Gallimimus specifically for the feathers occurring, just like at the top of the ankles, it's very likely that they would have stopped along the thigh region, maybe the mid thigh range, considering that seems to be where in the different skin fragments that we have discovered of different species of ornithomimids for the pigmentation, not pigmentation, pigment fibers to have stopped
Oh, they
or the
do have
feathers.
long fingers.
Yeah, these are pretty nuts. Even the head itself is far too large compared to its body size. The neck is also too muscular. The body, it's possible. It seems a bit different on this model compared to here, but it might just be we have a different view of the pelvis region. But I think that's his like bottom rib cage area, which there would have been a bottom rib cage for most species of theropod dinosaurs. Let's see, even the feet are too wide. That person hated Gallimimus. Let's see. This is probably an ornithomimus, possibly. At least it seemed to be, because in the overall picture, this isn't the whole thing. There's a tyrannosaur chasing it. Not sure whether or not it's supposed to be a Tarbosaurus or a T Rex. That's actually not a bad depiction of an ornithomimus. I think it's overall pretty good. It's just a bit of a question as to whether or not it would have had those specific types of feathers. It is possible, though, that temperatures might have dropped now and then over in the certain parts of Mongolia at the time. You still would have had lush floodplains, different marshes, not just a large desert. You couldn't support like the 40-ton Nemectosaur, Titanosaur sauropods within the region with that type of a habitat. It's hard enough for Bactrian camels today to make a living. You have to donate oats to keep the last lineage of brown bears alive. Let's see. So, Congonophon kelli isn't the first small animal known near the root of the Ornithodyryn family tree, but previously such specimens were considered isolated exceptions to the rule. Oh, by the way, I'm just going to remind everybody real quick. We are going over this very close relative of the dinosaurs has just been discovered in Madagascar. And this is possibly when he's standing up what he looks like. Just a very skinny tall creature.
If it came running through your house, you'd probably run from it.
Yeah, you might. Or
That'd be
you
good.
give it like a sandwich. In general, the scientific thought was that body size remained similar among the first archosaurs. The larger reptile group that includes birds, crocodilians, well, crocodilomorphs would be the better term, considering you would have different species of terrestrial pseudosuchians, or crocodilomorphs is probably the more relatable term. That would not just exist throughout the Mesozoic era or the time of the dinosaurs, but even to the Cenozoic, like seeming to have existed till close to the end of the Ice Age in some instances, and including today's crocodilians. So, non-avian dinosaurs being creatures like Brachiosaurus, Argentinosaurus, T Rex, Allosaurus, Stegosaurus. These are all non-avian dinosaurs. Avian dinosaurs would be the birds. And pterosaurs, so creatures like Pterodactylus or pterodactyl, Pteranodon, Quetzalcoatlus, and the earliest ornithodyrans. So this little guy. before increasing to gigantic proportions in the dinosaur lineage. Um, well, I think, yeah, it's referring to those ornithodyrans, but there are already a wide variety of other different lineages of archosaurs that were occurring within the mid-Triassic period. And I think that's something that tends to be left out is when looking at the Triassic period, it's usually like there were the smaller archosaurs or just smaller reptiles at that time, and then also dwarfed by the larger proto mammals. And it really isn't until maybe somewhere around 229, 230 million years ago that we start seeing a bit of an increase. Well, we start seeing different species of prosauropods occurring. So the ancestors to the long necked sauropods like Brontosaurus and Tronotus, and also some of the early carnivorous theropod dinosaurs. But in reality, we actually have, well, more recent years, different species of dinosaurs occurring earlier, but also a variety of different lineages of archosauromorphs that are occurring. So recent discoveries like Congo Kelai have given us a much better understanding of the early evolution of ornithodyrans. Analyzing changes in body size throughout archosaur evolution, we found compelling evidence that it decreased sharply early in the history of the dinosaur pterosaur lineage. Well, I think it's that also exaggerated body size that we see on this new species. I mean, that is just fairly odd. I think there are certain other archosaurs that have a somewhat similar type of a body structure, but that seems to be um, one of the most peculiar. So this miniaturization event indicates that the dinosaur, I would say miniaturization if you're looking at it like maybe as a whole in length, because truly it's not a large creature, but extremely long legs, and also very odd, like definitely an early Archosaur sort of a skull. Okay, indicates that the dinosaur and pterosaur lineages originated from extremely small ancestors, yielding important implications for their paleobiology. Well, definitely for sure. And then even you go further back into the Permian period, the Carboniferous, but in the Carboniferous period, like over 315 million years ago, we had some of the earlier species of reptiles occurring. Earliest, I'd say. So, what do we have here? Oh, okay. So, anatomy of the femur, the thigh bone, and maxilla of Congoniphenkelai. So, I think we have part of the upper arm bone, supposedly, or the humerus. And yeah, it seems, yeah, there we go. Yeah, looking at the upper maxilla of the upper jaw. And yeah, complete femur, thigh bone. Wow. Part of the shin bone. Wow, that would be an immense shin bone. That's only about a little more than half of it. And part of the metatarsal or ankle bone. And what? One of the, unless that's another part of the ankle bone.
There's a toe.
Yeah, it might be. Well, yeah, there seems to be a toe over here. But hmm. Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery. So, pitted microwear on Kunganufin Kelai's conical teeth indicates a diet of hard-shelled insects. Oh, okay. So they found with the upper maxilla a few of the teeth. That's good to see. Interesting. So it seems to really only focus on hard-shelled insects. So maybe even certain species or relatives of like the different rhinoceros horned beetles of today. This shift to insectivory. Well, I wouldn't say for reptiles in general. Now the question is this even a reptile considering there it's very possible this animal might have had feathers, so it might not have been. But let's say it is. That's not necessarily new in the lineage of reptiles extending to the later Carboniferous period, considering they were probably, for the most part, also feeding on other species of insects, but maybe they were going after different species of maybe worms at that point, depending on where they existed on the earth. And you could have had it where they might have even been going after smaller types of fish, like maybe minnow-sized. I guess I'm not too surprised it's not going after like smaller amphibians or reptiles because it's not exactly large. But I mean, depending on the species of lizard, still probably could. Let's see. So, which is associated with the diminutive body size, may have helped early ornithodyrans survive by occupying a niche different from their mostly meat-eating contemporaneous relatives. Yeah, you could say it's not necessarily the meat that you would find on other species of archosaur or a mammal, but insects are technically animal protein. They just provide different types of nutrients. Let's see. Maybe there's somebody else. I guess we could step in size. Maybe bring up um Camposaurus possibly. So CAMPOS. Huh. Yeah, it's not him. That actually looks a bit closer to the Pisanosaurus from before. Unless this is supposed to be an ornithopod from later into the Jurassic period. And the reason why I'm guessing that is it seems to be adjacent to some sauropod foot. There we go. So this is likely the ancestor to Coelophysis bari, a little bit later into the Triassic period. So Camposaurus was existing over in Arizona around 220 million years ago. And this creature was somewhere around 7 to 8 feet in length. They were pushing probably around 2.3 meters.
He doesn't
And
look that big there.
I can't tell. I think it's also a real statue. This isn't a bad look of Camposaurus, but I think it might be a little heavily built, despite possibly showing parts of the rib cage, which you wouldn't see. It also is likely that the earlier different species of theropods would have contained feathers. Considering we have more evidence coming in from the Triassic period of different theropods containing feathers or preserved pigmofibers. This could be Camposaurus. It does have a distinct sort of a head structure compared to the later Coelophysis. In some cases, like looking at the upper skull, possibly a little bit broader, just a bit taller of an upper maxilla. Facing off some species of Dicynodont, it could be Placerius because Placerius was existing over in Arizona, Texas at around this point in the Triassic, also before Coelophysis. Well, I wonder. Interesting, because I haven't
I'm
actually
not
seen.
sure that's him.
It could be. It's mentioning Erythrovinator. Um, hmm. This Camposaurus also has a very, I'd say, a little too thin
It's not
of,
him.
yeah, a little too thin of a skull for himself. There is a close relative, well, of the Camposaurus. I was also wondering, like, what early species of mammal that could be.
Oh, hold on.
Did it say?
No, it only says what that dinosaur was.
Huh. Um, but I would say it's interesting. They're almost giving this Placerius saber teeth, even though it technically had tusks, which both saber teeth are just enlarged canines, and tusks are not necessarily canines, but they are exterior teeth. But this animal was an herbivore, so it was not feeding on any dinosaurs or other species of proto mammals or mammals themselves during the Triassic period, as well as pretty much the rest of its lineage or Stallacaridae. Placerius was pushing around a ton or around 2,000 pounds or a little over 950 kilograms and likely fed on some of the earlier species of ferns, different species of shrubs during the Triassic. It would not have looked like the Arizona of today. In many cases, it would have been covered in different regions, like different regions would have floodplains, different conifer forests. So you also would have had herds of these animals. Most likely, this is also coming from the Placerius quarry that has been discovered over in Arizona. But Camposaurus was likely just feeding on smaller species of dinosaurs. Likely, like if this specific species of ornithodyryn was existing or coexisting with Camposaurus, he most likely would have hunted it. but also going after just smaller archosauromorphs and other reptiles and amphibians. So back to this newly discovered archosauromorph. The study also suggests that fuzzy skin coverings range from simple filaments to feathers, known on both the dinosaur and pterosaur sides of the ornithodyrene tree, may have originated for thermoregulation in this small body common ancestor. That's because heat retention in small bodies is difficult, and the mid late Triassic was a time of climatic extremes, inferred to have sharp shifts in temperature between hot days and cold nights. I mean, depending on where you are, that could very well be true. It seems to be less so during the Jurassic period. It seems to mainly just be quite hot. Maybe slightly cooler into the early Jurassic, but as you hit like the 165 million year mark, it becomes quite hot. And in the early Cretaceous, there seems to be a dive in temperature. So after about 143 million years ago. Okay, well, let's head to the next article. So from Sci News, paleontologists find giant soft-shelled egg of Cretaceous period marine reptile in Antarctica. Wow, an egg. That is odd considering if we're looking at like the different species of plesiosaurs, pliosaurs, what it's showing in the picture here, it seems to be a mosasaur. In older theories, it used to be presumed that the marine reptiles in general would have come to the beach to lay their eggs. But then further analyses on their overall anatomy has come to the conclusion that these animals would have given live birth and there doesn't they didn't have the ability to move around on land. So in many cases they would simply be beached or suffocate under their own weight. So what on earth is going on here? A giant fossilized egg of an extinct marine reptile has been found in the 68 million-year-old nearshore marine deposits in Antarctica. Well, we have found certain species of plesiosaurs adjacent to Antarctica, very possibly a certain mosasaur, but besides that, they are rare around the continent, or at least in marine deposits or marine fossil basins have been discovered um, on the continent. Oh, it's supposed to be the egg. Interesting. They're almost giving it like a snake sort of a, texture.
Well, it did say soft shell.
So almost like mosasaurs, kind of lacked calcium in their eggshells, which is also why snakes have that type of a brittle sort of a, uh, feeling. Named Antarcticulithis bradii, the new fossil is the first fossilized egg found in Antarctica. The specimen exceeds eggs of all known non avian dinosaurs in volume and differs from them in structure. Mm, wow. Like even larger than the different species of sauropods or the long necked dinosaurs. Measuring 29 by 20 centimeters or 11.4 by 7.9 inches. I'm actually surprised that is larger. It must be by slightly. And weighing 6.5 kilograms or around 14 or 15 pounds. It is the largest soft shell egg ever discovered and the second largest egg of any known animal. Wow. Okay, this is kind of shocking. Who's the largest? That is a bit of a mystery. Although the elephant bird, oh, right, him, the moa possibly, or another species of elephant bird. Although the elephant bird egg is slightly larger, its eggshell is roughly 5 times thicker. Like this specific species? No. Hmm. University of Texas at Austin paleontologist Lucas Legendre and his colleagues from the United States and Chile think that Antarcticulithis bradii was laid by a giant marine reptile, such as a mosasaur, a discovery that challenges the prevailing thought that such creatures did not lay eggs. Yeah, so this is a bit mysterious. Let's bring up another species of mosasaur, the Hinosaurus. Hainosauria. So this is a large species of mosasaur from the late Cretaceous as well. So this is pushing between 68 to 70 million years ago. And it reached around 40 feet in length, or pushing to 12.1 meters, and possibly weighed over 8 to 9 tons. But it seems to have had a bit of a thinner sort of a jaw structure compared to certain other species in mosasaurs, such as prognathodon or even globidens, which existed a bit earlier into the Cretaceous. Huh. I wonder who he's going after in this case. It's a dorsal finned. I'm not sure who that is.
Those flippers are weird.
Well, it's not just that. Like there
They're
weren't.
buoys sticking off of it.
Um. Yeah. Not also is the mosasaur. Does he have gills? These are reptiles. They would have simply gone to the surface and just took some air, like a bit of a whale to an extent, except they didn't have a blowhole. They did have nostrils.
Well, if they're gills,
Those are nostrils too.
they're backwards.
Yeah, maybe it's just an odd scratch mark, but there aren't any species of marine mosasaurs that we have discovered from the Cretaceous with a dorsal fin like a shark or an orca. There were marine reptiles, however, into the early late Cretaceous period around 92 million years ago, called the ichthyosaurs. And many of them did have dorsal fins. Not all species, however. Usually, as you would travel to the Triassic period, so before 202 million years ago, and you would have you would have swam into many species of large ichthyosaurs reaching well over 60 feet in length or pushing around 19 meters. Trying to think. Oh, yeah, I'm weighing over 30 tons, but they didn't have dorsal fins. Yeah, these are good reconstructions of this mosasaur. So, Hanosaurus was, I mean, it could have occasionally fed on dinosaurs, but the dinosaurs were either much smaller or you simply weren't the armored different species of ceratopsians or ankylosaur of the area, but or the era. Though it is likely. I mean, even full-grown adult hadrosaurs or duck-billed dinosaurs could still injure the creature. Um, let's see who else. Like even sauropods, probably just scavenging off of different dinosaur carcasses that were submerged in the coast or off the coast. And after that, probably just feeding on different species of marine fish, different species of long necked plesiosaurs. For some reason, though, this keeps showing, except it's a bit of an older depiction of another mosasaur. It could be Tylosaurus. But in many cases, they are shown feeding on sharks. And sharks were a big part of the marine ecosystem, even back in the Mesozoic. In fact, they evolved well into the Silurian period, so over 420 million years ago. But they would also survive the massive dinosaur extinction 66 million years ago. However, beforehand, they were a common sushi food source for the different species of marine reptiles at this point, except they didn't add rice with their stuff. Maybe occasionally kelp. But besides that, mosasaurs, also there's evidence for them feeding on each other from different bite marks not bite marks, teeth embedded onto the vertebrae of different species of mosasaurs. And, well, of course, one of these instances pops up. This could also be depicting a bit of a territorial sort of a look.
Well, it came up, but it didn't say what it was, so I didn't put it up.
Well, it is interesting because looking at the skull of the Hanosaurus, it seems to have more of like an elongated or narrow sort of a look. But this instance, it seems to be a bit more robust, unless they're just simply adding more tissue. But that doesn't seem to resemble the more narrow skulled, like other mosasaurs, such as Tylosaurus. Very interesting. The fins, despite like looking at the end of the tail fins being very distantly related to different species of ichthyosaurs, like back in the Triassic period, they share a very similar tail structure. At least looking at the end of the tail with different species, such as like the Symbolospondylis, and even possibly which is a species of medium-sized ichthyosaur from the Triassic, reaching Some around possibly 25 to 30 feet in length, or around 7.5 to 9 meters, and even larger shastosaurs from the Triassic, so over 213 million years ago. But this would have been a common occurrence to an extent in different Cretaceous oceans, whether it's 68 million years ago, like in the Western Interior Sea in North America. But at that point, most of it had receded. It still existed, but it was to a minor extent. Definitely 80 million years ago, when much of North America was split in half, especially as you head even further back, like to around 85 million years ago. Okay, we can head back to the article. It's just funny with the shark. And, and what's with all these small fish that they're depicting the mosasaurs feeding on? I mean, it's not that now and then he wouldn't grab something like I guess you could say a Cretaceous shark cracker now and then, but yeah, most likely he's feeding on much larger organisms or just much larger sharks in general. They're just comparing it to like a fish cracker. So let's see. University of Texas. Oh, I already said that. The fossil egg is from an animal the size of a large dinosaur. Well, I mean, maybe it's the size of a larger species of sauropod. This would be an immense species of mosasaur, like the largest species to exist. So far, it seems to be at the largest species of mosasaurs, like Mosasaurus hoffmanni, reaching possibly around 60 feet or pushing over 17 or 18 meters, and might have weighed somewhere in the range of 15 to maybe 20 tons. This would possibly be even larger.
What if it only grew 2 times the size it was hatched at?
Um, well, we have a major dwarf mosasaur, a true midget. We do have certain species of mosasaurs are not reaching much more than like 8 to 10 feet in length. They're pushing in between 2.4 to 3 meters. But it is completely unlike a dinosaur egg. It is, wait a second. Oh, never mind. It is most similar to the eggs of lizards and snakes, but it is from a truly giant relative of these animals. It does seem to be that mosasaurs are possibly close relatives of today's crocodile monitors or monitor lizards. Here's the egg, showing us the different layers. Hmm. So sediment outside the eggshell, sediment inside the egg. Wow. Hmm. I am surprised though that that is supposedly larger than any dinosaur egg. Not surprised though to an extent about it being, I guess you could say, a bit smaller or lighter than the moas, but it's also a shock that the moas has a larger egg than any other species, non-avian dinosaur. Considering the moa is just an extinct terrestrial large bird. It's from Ice Age New Zealand. The researchers found several layers of membrane that confirmed that Antarcticoluthis breadii was indeed an egg. The structure is very similar to transparent, quick hatching eggs laid by some snakes and lizards today. So, however, because the fossil egg is hatched and contains no skeletal material, oh, yeah, I mean that happens a lot with most species of at least dinosaur eggs have been discovered. Even though more recently there have been more preserved embryos or skeletons. The scientists had to use other means to zero in on the type of reptile that laid it. Okay, so they're just depicting a possible, or what seems to be this new species of mosasaur from Antarctica. I'm still puzzled. I mean, the fact that it seems to be this animal might have come to the beach to lay its eggs. They compiled a data set to compare the body size of 259 living reptiles to the size of their eggs. Wow. They found that the reptile that laid the egg would have been 7 meters or 23 feet long from the tip of its snout to the end of its body, not counting a tail. Okay. You mentioned earlier that this egg was laid by an animal it's the size of a large dinosaur. That is a smaller species of dinosaur. In fact, well, if you're comparing it to different species of sauropods, you can even say different species of ornithischians. So, different types of, I'd say, hadrosaurs or iguanodontids, different species of theropods. But 23 feet, I mean, you had like, let's see, certain species of carnivorous abelisaurs are around this size. Like, this is close to size of, or length of Carnotaurus, I should say. So a species of theropod that lived over in Argentina around 69 million years ago. So let's see. Not counting a tail. Oh, still though, it I would assume it's only going to add so much more length. Adding to that evidence, the rock formation where the Antarctica bradii egg was discovered also hosts skeletons from baby mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, along with adult specimens. Not sure if it mentioned where specifically this was found in Antarctica. There are a few fossil basins, even dating like back to the Jurassic period, if you're referring to just dinosaurs. So maybe it's kind of like with the long neck of certain species of elasmosaurs or the long necked plesiosaurs. Maybe it could have added another 20 or 30 feet to the animal, but I would assume it might not add a lot of weight. So let's see. Many authors have hypothesized that this was sort of a nursery site with shallow protected water, a cove environment where the young ones would have had a quiet setting to grow up. Yeah, and that has been a theory with different species of like the dorsal finned ichthyosaurs, different species of pliosaurs. It is certainly possible that these marine reptiles, despite possibly being cold blooded, I mean, there are different species of reptiles today, like even crocodiles, alligators will take care of their young for about 2 years. It's usually just the mother. Um, but it might have happened with these marine reptiles too. So I guess there is somebody else. Oh yeah. Aristonectes. So Aristonectes.
Okay, this guy looks like he's flying.
So this is a Cretaceous species of long-necked plesiosaur, but it's much more robust compared to other species. And yeah, it looks like he was some plesiosaur spirit in the clouds. Seems to be a bit of a more elongated sort of a reconstruction. Still not bad, unless there have been certain other specimens showing that maybe it's just not as robust a plesiosaur as we once thought. Well, this is another one. This almost looks like certain species from the Jurassic, but they had much larger teeth compared to their body, well, their skull size, and also just overall when looking at their anatomy, they seem to have been evolved for feeding on other species of marine reptiles. Where once you hit the Cretaceous period, seems to be all the plesiosaurs were likely feeding on just other species of fish. Yeah, these are all like really good reconstructions. Different species of the squid-like ammonites of the time. So basically, the marine creatures that you see in this picture with the shells. And it seems to be that every species had a shell. And there's even evidence for these animals having a leather covering to help protect themselves, at least in certain instances, because many of the different species of carnivores that hunted them could penetrate through the shells, depending on the species of smaller ammonite. But yeah, they also look quite cheerful in this picture. Let's see what else. It also seems to be that in many cases, you might have had it with these marine reptiles, especially the plesiosaurs, is that they needed to come to the surface for some air, probably somewhere between every 10 to 20 minutes. You might have had instances where they might have taken a slightly deeper breath and might have been able to stay submerged for over an hour. I think another question is whether or not some of these different species of animals, and it might have been for the larger species, might have made annual migrations, especially if they're following also just the shoals of fish or even krill and ammonites in some cases. It is interesting. You see many depictions of plesiosaurs like amongst ammonites, but that's actually kind of rare to see one actually attacking and trying to eat an ammonite. Makes you want some calamari. Okay. Well, let's head over to the Cenozoic era. So let's head forward in time. From the Times of India.indiatimes.com. In 1987, Fort Peck tribes returned over 100 bison to 5,800 acres. Decades later, they stopped hunting their own herd to restore the original cultural purpose. I'm pretty sure that was like the main
Purpose?
yeah, purpose for bison to the Indian tribes. In 1987, leaders on the Fort Peck Reservation in northeastern Montana began working to restore buffalo to Assiniboine and Sioux lands, reviving an animal central to their culture, spirituality, and way of life. 2 years later, the tribes purchased more than 100 bison from the nearby Fort Belknap Reservation and established a herd of, or on 5,800 acres. So, what began as a cultural restoration effort eventually developed an economic component as the costs of managing a large roaming herd grew, and Fort Peck began allowing paying hunters from outside the reservation to hunt its bison. So, the hunts generated revenue, but over time, tribal leaders became concerned uh, that the program was drifting away from the reason the buffalo had been brought back in the first place. Fort Peck ultimately ended the commercial hunting operation and shifted toward a system in which tribal members could hunt through a cultural lottery, allowing hunting to remain part of the herd's purpose while putting the community rather than outside customers at the center of the program. This remarkable transformation illustrates how indigenous communities can successfully reclaim cultural traditions while building sustainable programs that honor ancestral values over commercial interests. The decision ultimately placed cultural stewardship at the heart of the herd, ensuring the buffalo remain more than an economic resource for future generations. Okay, so why Fort Peck elders cited the bison program had lost its way. According to the Property and Environment Research Center, Robert Magnant, who has managed Fort Peck's buffalo program for nearly 15 years, said the change came after tribal elders told program leaders that the community had lost sight of the purpose behind bringing the buffalo back. The issue is not hunting itself, which remains an important part of the tribe's relationship with the animal, but the decision to make the herd available to outside hunters for a fee. Okay, once commercial hunts became an important source of income, the economic value of the animals risked overshadowing their cultural role. Okay, this is being very repetitive. Um,
I just read the title. I thought it sounded interesting.
Yeah, I thought there was going to be more to it, like restoration of just overall land. The cultural lottery now issues a limited number of tags each year, with demand exceeding supply. Around 50 tags were issued to tribal members last year. What we don't even know the population of the bison, like
That was my thought too.
like just 100 back in '87. So demonstrating that hunting remains inactive. Okay, yeah, it already stated that. Okay, okay, how Yellowstone bison became part of Fort Peck's restoration effort. A second chapter in the program's history began with Yellowstone National Park, where a growing wild bison population created long standing disputes over how animals could move beyond the park's boundaries. In 2000, federal and Montana agencies established the Interagency Bison Management Plan, while the Intertribal Buffalo Council later became involved in the management framework. In spring 2012, Montana transferred 61 certified disease free Yellowstone bison to Fort Peck. Yeah, it's specific. It's not hitting me what disease. That's usually a concern for like different cattle herds, other bison. prompting a legal challenge from critics who argued that state law required landowner approval for bison movements. In 2013, the Montana Supreme Court ruled unanimously in favor of the tribes, finding that the relevant law did not apply to reservation land in the manner the challengers had argued. The Yellowstone origin animal subsequently became an important part of Fort Peck's conservation work, helping the reservation develop its capacity to quarantine and certify disease free bison for transfer to other tribal communities. Okay. Um, Here it is. Fort Peck's program has expanded dramatically since the original herd was established. The reservation now manages more than 800 bison across roughly 33,000 acres and operates quarantine facilities that support its work with Yellowstone origin animals.
That doesn't sound like a lot of bison for 33,000 acres.
Yeah, it's very few. Through the Buffalo Conservation Transfer Program, Fort Peck has distributed disease free bison to 27 reservations across 16 states, helping other tribes establish or expand their own herds. The program also made its first international transfer to Canada last year. Fort Peck's longer term goal is to grow its own herd to about 1,500 bison across 150,000 acres. Jeez.
Well,
I
they're
gotta
wiping
say,
out 50 or 60 of them a year. That's just what we know of.
yeah, but yeah, I would say that's not a huge number.
Well, over 10 years, that's basically the 1,500 number.
Well, the question is, depending on where this is, which I think it's just somewhere along the prairie in some part of central Montana. I don't think it's too far from the Rocky Mountain front, but you have it where, like over in Yellowstone, there's around six to 7,000 bison, but they're also coexisting with tens of thousands of elk in the region, um, different pronghorn herds. So there are mule deer, whitetail deer.
Bears.
Yeah, you could possibly even put the brown bears. They're competing for grasses in many situations. Trying to think, there's some other grass eater, possibly a certain species of birds in the area too. They count. Uh, um. Anyways, that it. Yep. Okay. Let's head to another part of the Cenozoic era, or another part of the world. So from also the Times of India.indiatimes.com.
I don't know how I did that.
Um yeah, they put up some stuff. A South African couple combined 11 former livestock farms into a 67,000 acre reserve, restored the land, and brought cheetahs back to the Great Karoo after 130 years. Well, it sounds like you're over in somewhere in Australia, but no, I wonder, just by the picture, I'm not too familiar with the Great Karoo area.
What's this? South Africa. How did you get?
Well, I mean, it could be over like adjacent to Namibia. There's a wide range of like over 30 different types of ecosystems over in South Africa.
I meant you said Australia.
Oh, kangaroo, karoo.
Oh, okay.
Um, Instead of, boing, it's nearum, cheetah. So in 1997, a couple, Sarah and Mark Tompkins, set out to restore a part of South Africa's Great Karoo that had lost much of its wildlife. Their effort eventually turned 11 former livestock farms into a 67,000 acre reserve, creating a large area where the land could recover and wildlife could return. The Great Karoo is a vast semi desert region with open plains, mountains, and relatively few people. So it's either in like the southern region of South Africa, because there's many um, sort of hilly and mountainous regions along the coast, or it's possibly adjacent to Namibia. Once you start hitting like northeastern South Africa, it's almost flat with a lot of like acacia tree terrain, kind of like in the greater Kruger National Park area. According to Samara Reserve, it once supported large numbers of wildlife, including elephants, lions, black rhinoceros, and African painted dogs. But hunting and farming and other human activity had gradually changed the landscape and reduced its biodiversity. So, working with 9 ecologists, Tompkins brought together 11 farms covering 5 of South Africa's 9 vegetation biomes. They started with removing alien invasive plants, dismantling internal fences and allowed the property to rest for almost a decade. This was followed by a long term program to rehabilitate the land and reintroduce wildlife that had disappeared from the area. Kind of wondering if it was like a bunch of cheap land to an extent. Wildlife could only return if the landscape could support it again. The Great Karoo had once been home to large herds of antelope, including springbok, eland, and blesbok. Oh, yeah, blesbok are not very common. They're actually kind of rare in general. I think there's only like a few thousand of them. So, lions, cheetahs, black rhinos, leopards, wild dogs, hyenas, and other wildlife also lived in the region. Over time, livestock farming replaced much of that wildlife, while fences divided the land and prevented animals from moving through their former ranges. The Tompkinses began reversing that process by removing the barriers and allowing the land to recover. As the habitat improved, Samara began bringing back species that disappeared locally. The first major milestone came with the return of cheetahs to the Great Karoo after an absence of about 130 years. Wow, I actually didn't think, because what is this occurring back in 1970s? Maybe. Um, because I didn't know that there was any part of Africa, maybe northern Africa, that hadn't had cheetahs for that long. The reason why I'm mentioning northern Africa, even though that's not sub-Saharan Africa, is that you had it where, well, even then, like the brown bears, the lions in those regions, and also the brown bears there are much smaller than their contemporaries over in different parts of Europe, um, northern Asia, and you could say parts of even East Asia too, like Japan and North America, but like they had gone extinct by the 1880s. Lions a little further into like the early 1900s, but this is just shocking. Let's see. In 2004, Samurai. Oh, I think I already said that. Okay, three cheetahs were initially released. That's small group. According to Africa Geographic, one of them was Cybella, a young female that had been rescued after suffering abuse at the hands of hunters. She became an important part of Samurai's conservation story and went on to raise numerous cubs. The reserve later released other herbivores, including eland, red hartebeest, gemsbok, giraffe, white rhinoceros, and buffalo. Um, yeah, wow. Seems like they were just releasing almost everybody
That
here.
was funny. You mixed white with rhinoceros and said rhinoceros.
Yeah. It's the return of prey animals was important as predators were being brought back. The aim was not simply to create a collection of animals, but to rebuild a functioning ecosystem in which different species could once again play their natural roles. I mean, it definitely did sound like this area was basically a biological desert, at least in also in terms of the animals. But um, so I'm wondering, like, what were the cheetahs feeding on at first? Like occasional rabbits, squirrels in the region, which and um contemporary to what many people might think, there are squirrels and rabbits, porcupines native to Africa, despite most associating those animals with the northern hemisphere. Um, Also eagles. So let's see. The work continued over the following years. In 2013, Samara reintroduced the desert adapted subspecies of the critically endangered black rhinoceros. Fewer than 5,000 black rhinos remain worldwide. Yeah, it kind of goes slightly up and down. Elephants followed in 2017. Whoa! After an estimated absence of 150 years, a family herd was moved to Samara, followed by two mature bulls in 2018. Wow, that is a huge move. I was actually wondering if it was going to occur. So in 2019, lions were also reintroduced to Samara. The animals had been absent from the area for about 180 years. Gosh, I didn't realize that. I guess during certain points in the 1800s, 1700s, certain animal populations were going extinct. I really thought it was only like 1900s this was occurring.
John Doe says he's here.
Oh, well, welcome back, Allosaurus.
Hopes everyone's doing well.
Yeah, a bit of a mystery with some marine reptile, well, supposedly a mosasaur egg that was discovered off the coast of Antarctica back in the late Cretaceous around 68 million years ago. Let's see. Oh, so the return of lions was significant because they are apex predators. They basically brought almost everybody, except I think the zebras were left out. Like out of everybody, it's like you think we're a joke. Their presence can affect how other animals use the landscape and how prey species interact with their surroundings. According to CNN, the first lions introduced to Samara were Titus and Scalelli. Yeah, it's probably real news. Followed by another female Sheba. The lions later produced cubs, marking the return of a breeding lion population to the reserve. The rewilding effort also led to something the Tompkinses did not have to plan themselves. In 2021, a leopard was seen at Samara for the first time. Later, camera trap monitoring and tracking confirmed repeated sightings. Yeah, I mean, this is quite remarkable with all the species coming back here. Today, Samara says more than 60 mammal species. That's pretty good for most areas of sub Saharan Africa, including the Big Five, have been recorded on the reserve, along with 225 bird species. The reserve is also now home to large herds of antelope, while elephants and rhinoceroses move across the landscape, whatever that means. Samara has developed into a destination for tourists wanting to experience the rewilded landscape. So the reserve now offers guided safaris and walking experiences that allow visitors to see the animals.
Yeah, walk through those lines.
Oh yeah, that does happen in different protected areas or game reserves and national parks.
I mean, they're,
I
like, sending snacks out for the lions.
Yeah, that occasionally happens. Like where the tourists do become the snacks. Let's see.
I like those videos where the cheetahs jump on the what is it, like a van or something that's open, and
Yeah,
it's
it's just like
scaring people, and they just go lay on them while they're driving.
yeah, it's one of those or a few of those extended Land Cruisers, and cheetahs almost like a bit of a loyal pet because they are a bit like the dogs of the cat family. So the family's long-term plan is also larger than the reserve itself. Samara hopes to help create an ecological corridor connecting three national parks and allowing wildlife to move between protected areas. I actually thought that that was already occurring, but maybe it's situated between a few other already created protected regions. I don't think they're as abundant though in northwestern South Africa, but I'll have to recheck. Because usually it's those specific protected areas that people are more familiar with, like over in the Kruger area in northeastern South Africa, where there's over 30 protected areas adjacent to the park. That's also not including like areas in southern Mozambique, which is just adjacent to the region.
John Doe said that, he got a word on Saturday afternoon that his wait, is my first of no, no, he got word Saturday afternoon is his first official day at the museum.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, that's amazing. That's great. Let's see. Is there anything else? Oh, that's it. Hmm. Okay. Well, we're going to give everybody a
I have one more.
oh, okay. Okay. We have another one. Okay. So let's see what's going on here. From spacedaily.com. Humpback whales are interrupting orca hunts to rescue completely different species, swimming underneath a doomed seal and lifting it out of the water on their chest, or forming a wall between the killers and a gray whale calf. And scientists still can't fully explain why they bothered to save animals they have nothing to gain from. Well, I mean, of course, they're leaving out the people. I mean, you might be able to give these guys a Nobel Peace Prize, but that'll be it. For years, humpback whales have been mysteriously intervening in orca hunts to save animals they'll never meet again. A pattern so bizarre, biologists are still reaching for a plausible explanation. You serious?
They had to use AI for this.
Read this for what? An eye picture? I tell you what, I'm gonna check it out anyway. Let's keep going. It's not a story anyone would have believed if it weren't so thoroughly documented. A pod of killer whales in Antarctica is chasing a Weddell seal that's taken refuge on a small ice floe. I feel I'm narrating a part of one Attenborough's documentaries. The orcas swim shoulder to shoulder to create a wave that washes the seal off the ice and into the water. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Death looks certain. Oh gosh, what is this? I'm literally narrating an episode.
I didn't read it. I just liked the title.
Wait a second. The marine ecologist who watched this happen in 2009 was, on his own subsequent account, so bewildered that it took him years to work out what he'd actually seen. And what he ended up finding once he started asking other researchers whether they'd witnessed anything similar was that it wasn't a one off, it's a pattern. And it involves species the humpbacks have no obvious reason to help. Okay. This sounds better. Okay, what the researchers actually documented. According to a 2017 review paper by Dr. Robert Pittman of NOAA's Southwest Fisheries Science Center with Volker D. Christine Gabrielle and 11 other co-authors from research institutions around the world, published in Marine Mammal Science under the title Humpback Whales Interfering When Mammal-Eating Killer Whales Attack Other Species, Mobbing Behavior and Interspecific Altruism. The team compiled 115 documented interactions between humpback whales and killer whales over a 62-year period from 1951 to 2012. Whoa. Okay. Well, that's a interesting time scale. So the interactions came from researchers, whale watch operators, and wildlife photographers across multiple ocean basins. The numbers, once you sit with them, don't quite behave the way you'd expect. And 57%. Okay. Of the interactions, the humpbacks were the ones who started it. They swam towards the killer whales, not away. 95% of the orcas involved were mammal eating forms rather than fish eating ones. Oh, I guess I forget that there are different populations of killer whales that will feed on, I guess, specifically like fish or krill, but that would be more of like crustacean or amphipods. Feeders and per se, like fish eaters, though it can also vary depending on the season. Meaning the humpbacks were reliably distinguishing between the two ecological populations and only intervening when the killer whales were hunting warm-blooded prey. Whoa, whoa, whoa! The great white sharks were like a word, like what? Because we're
John Doe said, "What whales sleep vertically?" I think it's the humpback, but I'm not sure.
I don't know either. Um, Yeah, I think they go into sort of a resting state for a very short period of time, like somewhere between 10 to 20 minutes. It's very similar with different species of dolphins. Um, but I don't know. But no, what I was going to say, yeah, the great white sharks, because they are also ectothermic or warm blooded. So, and in the interactions where humpbacks approached killer whales that were actively attacking something, 87% involved a kill or a hunt in progress. Hmm. Well, that's interesting. Is that it? Oh, no. Okay. The bit that made the paper genuinely surprising is what happened next. When the humpbacks arrived at the scene of an attack, only 11% of the time was the prey another humpback. The other 89% of the time, the killer whales were hunting something else entirely: a seal, a sea lion, a porpoise, a gray whale calf, a minke whale, a sunfish. Across the full data set, humpbacks were documented interfering with orca attacks on 10 different species.
Sperm whales.
Oh, well, that makes sense considering they're not necessarily the deepest divers, but they're one of them because the Cuvier's beaked whale, I think, beats its depth record.
What does that have
Uh,
to do with sleeping vertically?
Um, I would just think because maybe something about the pressure and would be able to handle it better. Though the Cuvier's beaked whale also might be more of like a dolphin. Across there's 90 species of cetaceans today, not including the prehistoric species from the Eocene epoch over 35 million years ago. Let's see. Across the full data set, humpbacks were documented interfering with orca attacks on 10 different species, including 6 kinds of pinnipeds, which is also the pinnipeds are like the different species of seals, three three other cetacean species or 3 other whales, and or dolphins, and 1 bony fish. Oh, maybe this is the great white. The interventions weren't casual. Humpbacks traveled up to 2 kilometers to reach an ongoing attack. Wow. That large of an animal traveling around what, a mile or 3/4 of a mile or so? And I meant that in a sarcastic way. They approached bellowing and trumpeting. They positioned, wow, it's like tribes fighting each other or like some dramatic, no, elephants do this too. This isn't, I guess, this isn't just restricted to humans. Chimps will do this. I guess you could even say lions will do it occasionally, like even bears. But bears, it's usually like right at the point of attack, or wolves in some cases. Okay, they're just shouting. They position themselves between the killer whales and the prey. They tail slash. They struck orcas with their flippers, which on a 14-meter humpback or pushing around 48 feet, that's kind of a long humpback actually, are capable of doing real damage. They stayed for hours in some cases, refusing to leave until the killer whales gave up. Wow. They really are. They're loyal to this these different types of rescues. Let's see. So in one, okay, they stayed for hours in some cases, refusing to leave until the killer whales gave up. In one incident in Monterey Bay in May 2012, described in reporting by National Geographic on the specific case, at least 14 humpbacks converged on a group of killer whales that killed a gray whale calf. 14. Wow. Like almost as if some uh, I how do I say this? Like the humpback Navy SEALs or something, and spent hours preventing the orcas from feeding on the carcass.
I was thinking
Um,
they're kinda like lifeguards.
yeah, except they already killed it. Um, hmm. One humpback stationed itself directly next to the dead calf, head pointed at it, tail slashing every time a killer whale approached. Um, or they're not telling us. In reality, he seasoned it. He's like, no, it's got to marinate. Wait, it's kind of messed up. But um, that would be funny. None of this makes obvious sense. Oh yeah, there and all these there are these krill, and they're like, "Are we not animals to you? We have souls and feelings as well."
You mean as they eat them?
Yeah. Um, why they might do it and why nobody's quite sure. Problem on any straightforward reading of animal behavior is that helping unrelated members of other species carries real costs and no obvious benefit. I mean, yeah, the like same humpbacks spend energy on the intervention, but what I was going to say is that they're using blubber, like they're using energy reserves. Are any of the females pregnant in this situation? Like,
Well, do they have anything better to do?
yeah, it's but no, instead, I yeah, I'm not sure what really the benefit is, especially on the humpbacks position. But it mentioned like there was a bony fish, and just wondering if it's a shark or it's something else. It's not the shark. I mean, they're having a lot of problems with the orcas consistently hunting them. They put themselves at some risk, referring to the humpbacks, though adult humpbacks are large enough that killer whales rarely try to attack them directly. They forego whatever they were doing before the fight broke out, and the animal whose life they end up saving has no way of returning the favor. So gray whale calves don't grow up to rescue humpback whales. Seals don't remember. Wait, what? An elephant never forgets, and a seal.
You'll never remember.
Yeah. Um, Sunfish do not, in any meaningful sense, participate in a reciprocal ecosystem of mutual aid. Um,
What's the sunfish gonna do?
but is that the fish that they're talking about? I think it's the specific ones where it's like one fin is directly above its main core of its body, and the other is directly beneath the center. Gosh, those great whites. I guess, well, maybe it's because they try to eat younger humpbacks as well. Yeah, it's probably why. Sheesh. Pittman's own explanation, as he put it in an interview with Science Magazine at the time the paper was published, is that the humpbacks are probably not doing this deliberately in the sense we usually mean by that word. His hypothesis is that they've evolved a very simple rule. Something like when you hear a killer whale attacking, go and break it up. The rule almost certainly developed as a defense of humpback calves. There we are. Yep, that's the sunfish. Just drifts through the sea. Okay, what specifically he feeds on, I don't know. I haven't studied much about their behavior. Um, okay, because mammal eating killer whales do sometimes hunt young humpbacks, and adult humpbacks who intervene can drive them off. And just to remind everybody, all whales and dolphins are mammals, and so are seals or sea lions. Sea lions are also seals. They're just different types of seals or pinnipeds. Oh yeah, it's a very good picture of him. Over evolutionary time, humpbacks who intervened saved more of their own calves and left more descendants. The rule got locked in. What the rule doesn't do, and on Pittman's reading, is distinguish between an attack on a humpback calf and an attack on anything else. The humpback hears killer whales going after prey. The humpback goes to break it up. If the prey turns out to be a seal or a gray whale calf, so be it. The humpback has already committed to the intervention by the time it arrives, and the underlying behavioral rule doesn't have a subroutine for backing out once the species involved turns out not to be a relative.
I don't know why I find this so funny.
Yeah, um, I think it's just a bit odd
I
for
can
the.
see you go, "Woohoo, I'm coming."
I mean, yeah, basically. I never mentioned if they helped any otters though, because orcas will go after sea otters, which is, if you accept it, a generally deflationary explanation. It's not altruism in the noble sense. It's a simple decision rule that happens to produce altruistic looking outcomes because the rule was never sophisticated enough to distinguish who was and wasn't worth saving. So some researchers find that explanation completely satisfying. Others don't. Alyssa Schulman-Schneiger, one of Pittman's co-authors, has suggested that some individual humpbacks who intervened have themselves been attacked by killer whales in the past and may be responding to something closer to remembered trauma than to a simple hardwired rule. That would actually make more sense as to just randomly doing it. It's not that it can't occur, but especially if it's like a sustained tradition.
John Doe said, "I just looked it up. Sperm whales sleep vertically, called drift sleeping, with herds pointing up. Oh, heads, not herds.
Well, in terms of pod, but yeah,
Pod.
it's pod of whales,
No,
pod.
with its head
Yeah,
pointing up."
yeah. I was just referring to the
Oh, you're pointing what I said,
um, yeah,
where I said herds.
um, yeah. Interesting. I wonder specifically why they're also the only ones to do that. Like, what is the benefit? I'm wondering if maybe they lose less energy in that position. Also, what depth are they doing it at as well? Let's see. Others have pointed out that the level of coordination in some interventions, particularly the Monterey Bay incident with 14 humpbacks arriving from different directions. Oh, yeah, it is interesting. What is this, like guerrilla warfare or something? Is hard to explain by a rule that fires purely on hearing a killer whale acoustic signature. And Pittman himself has conceded that the possibility of something like inadvertent altruism, in which the humpbacks are intending to help but end up doing so as a byproduct of a behavioral rule, doesn't quite rule out the possibility that something closer to intention is also in the mix.
30 to 50 feet.
That's it? In Oh, that would make sense because it's right next to the surface. Because all of a sudden they become completely conscious and are like, "Oh, okay, I need some air," and they just go back to their state of rest. But the question is, how long do they rest for? And I don't mean like, well, I mean you could say also at one point, but like how
Deep
long are
sleep sessions deep sleep sessions only last between 10 and 15 minutes.
wow? So it's not much different from dolphins in many instances. Interesting, at least like ball nosed dolphins. Um, yeah, I find that a bit shocking. I thought it would actually be a bit longer. What the paper actually concludes is unusually careful. Interspecific altruism in the paper's wording could not be ruled out, which is not a claim that humpbacks are behaving altruistically toward other species. It's a claim that after 115 documented interactions across 62 years, the researchers couldn't cleanly reduce the pattern to any simpler explanation. Something is going on out there. It looks a lot like one species deciding reliably and at cost to itself to help members of other species who have nothing to offer in return. Whether that's the same thing humans mean when they use the word altruism is a question nobody on the current evidence can quite answer. Hmm. No, that's it. Hmm. Okay, well, we're going to give everybody a minute to put anything else into the comments. So, thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy Live Daily News. Happy International Humpback Whale Day. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
Hold up. Uh, what's the difference between dolphins, porpoises, and whales? I can never remember.
Well, it seems whales on average are larger. Now, technically, or you could yeah, technically whales and dolphins, they all belong to the cetacean lineage. Also, in different cases, dolphins can be referred to as whales, but that distinct difference, whales also do not contain dorsal fins. So that specific central fin towards the center of the back of their body. But it's also odd because when looking at different species also of earlier whales, it's very possible they might have had a smaller dorsal fin, but it also seems to replicate that almost small dorsal fin that you might see on certain, possibly humpback whales today in some cases. Unless I'm just mistaking it for certain species like back in the later Eocene period or even to the early Oligocene, so between 30 and 40 million years ago, like with the basilosaurids. Um, but who else? Oh, when it comes to the different species of whales today, but they're also the toothed whales, usually, at least the baleen whales, they have their teeth are not made of bone, but of keratin, like our hairs and fingernails. And if you're looking at like the orcas, bottlenose dolphins, porpoises, they all have teeth made out of solid bone. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what else. Porpoises also tend to have more of like a roundish, sort of a less pointed type of a skull structure, whereas dolphins, in many cases, tend to have a longer and narrower sort of a skull. Despite it seems to be in many cases feeding on like the same different types of cephalopods, like if you're referring to squid, like the ammonites from the Mesozoic are gone, but like sometimes even different types of octopus. They're also going after krill occasionally. Usually, when it comes to mammals or let's say pinnipeds or seals, it's usually like just the orcas doing it or hunting them. It's a mystery with the larger toothed whales or that look, very dolphin-like, or like virtually a very, large, like 40 to 50-foot long dolphin or sometimes even longer because we almost never see them. Um,
Wait, there's a dolphin that's 40 or 50 feet long?
well, it's specifically those different types of beaked whales, but they always end up being beached, and there's only been, like 1 or 2 species that we also have only, like, 2 or 3 accounts of actually seeing it out in the water. Um, hmm. I'm trying to think of the other differences. Like, even when it comes to their social structures and the pods, at least when it comes to the orcas, they tend to be matriarchal. And also, in many cases, the males, I believe, end up like staying with like their own families for a large portion of their life. I'm not so sure about most of the other dolphins or porpoises, though, in general. Um, Even humpbacks. Well, not humpbacks, like the baleen toothed whales. Yeah, that's all I have at the moment.
Okay, Akita Bear on Kick asks, not related to today's news, but what is your favorite early or mid Jurassic dinosaur
Oh,
and why?
hmm. Well, mid or early Triassic, so we can't include creatures like Coelophysis onto this, or most of the like Plateosaur lineage of dinosaurs or the prosauropods. But mid Triassic, we could still stick in probably like the 228 million year realm and to 252 million years ago. Hmm. I'd say possibly some creature like maybe Herrerasaurus. He does seem to have occurred like around 230 million years ago. I do like Eodromius, Eoraptor, certain other proto dinosaurs, but those aren't true dinosaurs. Think of like Ephegia. But Herrerasaurus. So we're talking about a creature like there seems to be possibly two different species of Herrerasaurus specifically because there's Herrerasauridae. So it has been discovered over in different parts of South America, North America, Africa during the Triassic, and reaching around 7 to 800 pounds, or a little over 320 kilograms. But probably preyed on some of the earliest species of prosauropods. other crocodilomorphs in the region for looking at like Argentina and Chile that it inhabited.
What'd you like about it, though?
It has like it's one of the largest species of theropods to exist at that point, and it's also I just like the overall like lean sort of a build that it has for mid Triassic neotheropods. Well, also that's another thing. It's one of the earlier large species of neotheropoda to exist. Seems to be quite quick. Um, He also, like, long like, his arms are almost, like, a bit of, like, between a dromaeosaurs and certain carnosaurs back in the Jurassic. So, like, a major mixture of different later, lineages of carnivorous dinosaurs that you have already in Herrerasaurus at that point. Mm, okay. Well, thanks for joining. And, from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. Happy International Humpback Whale Day. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.